Skews. Now, listen, all the Bob Woodward stuff, we, of course, have countless examples of Donald Trump's dumbassery to discuss at length tonight. But for the official dumbass report up top, I wanted to try to switch it up. You know, I myself have maligned recently Donald Trump always being dumbass. So I wanted to some other dumbass story we could find in America for tonight's show. And as it turns out, I had to search no further than my old stomping grounds in East Tennessee. The SEC football season hasn't even started yet, but already my beloved Knoxville is under siege from Tigers. And not the Tigers at LSU or Auburn University, but real life, honest to goodness, Carol Baskin's ass Tigers. Well, to be fair, one Tiger, singular, is currently on the loose in Knoxville. And so it is just one tiger, but look, as somebody who lived there for 7 years, I could tell you, in Knoxville, one tiger is a shitload of tigers. Well, we don't have the infrastructure for that. It's like how 2 inches of snow is a lot of snow there, you know? Like, we're not prepared to deal with that amount of this crisis. There's probably people lined up at grocery stores buying milk and eggs right now because the news is calling for tigers this weekend. It's going to be bedlam. I don't know what's going to happen.
You say it's like tigers in East Tennessee is like when some like invasive species of frog opted into Australia, something like that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like how cats have decimated New Zealand's bird population. That's what East Tennessee is about to just a bunch of kids about to disappear to feed tigers.
Be overrun with tigers. Well, here's the thing, Mark. So far, unless I've missed the latest updates on it, so far they don't know exactly whereabouts this tiger came from. They can't figure that out. The Knoxville Zoo has officially confirmed that all of their tigers are present and accounted for. And there is, of course, a big cat sanctuary.
Isn't that what you said? Isn't that what you would say if you were a zoo who'd fucked up and lost a tiger?
Yes, 100%. But I feel like that applies more to the next possible conspirator here. There is, of course, a big cat sanctuary in East Tennessee. And I say, of course, now because I feel like a few months ago, before Tiger King ever came out on Netflix, people would be like, what? There's a big cat sanctuary in East Tennessee? But ever since that, they're like, yeah, well, they got hillbillies and meth, so of course they got a big cat sanctuary. But there is one, and it's called Tiger Haven, and they are also denying any responsibility or ownership of this wayward feline, and I'm 100% with you where they are concerned. I feel like that's a little bit dubious, because, I mean, this tiger, there is some hillbilly somewhere in East Tennessee that knows he lost a tiger and is trying to find his tiger, and somebody needs to get to the bottom of it.
The whole thing with Tiger King was as soon as they got too old for people to hold for pictures, they had to put them down, right? So that was why Carol was the good one, right? Because she was the one who was keeping tigers into old age, in theory. But you take a tiger out, to the woods to put it down, and you reach back for your beer, look up, tiger's gone. Holy shit, you got a problem on your hands. But do we have a police confirm? Is any sort of authority confirm this tiger sighting, or did somebody get high and see a tiger?
Well, that's also a little up in the air, it sounds like. There's people saying, like, there have been, I guess, somehow confirmed sightings of some kind of big cat, and some other people are saying, like, well, it's maybe not necessarily a tiger, but it seems to be a tiger. And I said somebody needs to get to the bottom of it, and don't worry, somebody's going to, Mark. Tell me this isn't a basic cable made-for-TV movie from the 90s in the making right here, because this tiger is loose in Knox County. And so who's going to be the man for the job? The mayor, right? Every cable TV movie, the mayor shows up. Do y'all know who the mayor of Knox County is?
Oh man, Kane!
It's this guy. It is this guy, Glenn Kane Jacobs. We've got a mute demon from the underworld / mayor squaring off against a loose tiger in a cage match, or however it plays out. But that's what's going on back in my old comedy hometown of Knoxville. Go Vols, everybody. But I believe in Mayor Kane.
The night that the tiger got loose in Knox County does sound like a great title for an 80s movie. It's either a zany comedy or a horror movie. I'm not sure which, but it's like Tremors. You got to get Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward team up with a couple of rifles to go hunt some tigers.
Absolutely.
I know what wayward tiger sightings how they can tear a community apart, because one of the things that happened when Tiger King came out, it settled some old beefs from high school kids where I'm from, because Doc Antle lived in my hometown for a while, Buckingham County, Virginia, because he lived at this yoga, let's call it retreat. It's a cult. This yoga retreat, where he kept his tigers and stuff. And so when Tiger King talked about him being at Yogaville, like 20 years ago, a bunch of kids riding a school bus to school saw some monkeys and tigers. They swore for years they saw monkeys and tigers at the side of the bus window, but nobody believed them, and they got roasted to death. So when Tiger King came out, and it proved that there were tigers in Buckingham County in the mid to late 80s and early 90s, people got full of themselves on Facebook, tagging all their friends in, basically the middle finger emojis. So it was
yeah. Tiger King is fun. Tiger King made me also realize something about where I grew up, that it's like, it was so obvious. Like, as soon as I first talked about it to somebody in the context of Tiger King, I was like, oh yeah, that was always weird. But like, no one ever thought it was weird at the time. But we had like a Dollar General Joe Exotic in Salina where I grew up. And I know it's like, isn't Joe Exotic the Dollar General Joe Exotic? But that's just how red ass. Yeah, right. Yeah, no.
It was a millionaire with 100 tigers and a lot of great.
You're right. He had a whole operation. But in my hometown, there was this guy who was a prominent businessman in town who was also openly homosexual, and again, I didn't even understand how wild this was at the time. He would bring like multiple like 21-year-old male prostitutes to high school ball games and stuff, like one on each arm, just like flossing or whatnot. And he had a little zoo, and I don't think he had tigers, but he had like, off-brand tigers. He had like mountain lions or pumas or something back there, but he had kangaroos, and he had llamas and camels and zebras and all this type of shit. And he also had a monkey named Carlos, who he lost custody of earlier this year, and that's been a heart-wrenching story on Salina Facebook, him trying to get custody of his monkey back, which I believe he finally did. So him and Carlos have been reunited, so there's some happy endings in 2020.
So was the monkey being fostered in the meantime?
Yes, I believe so, yeah. I don't want to give away too many personal details here, Mark. It's very sensitive subject around town. But no, I don't know exactly what happened with the monkey, but he got Carlos back. But anyway, like, I never thought twice about that guy's existence or anything about any of that growing up there until like Tiger King made me reflect upon it later. And I was like, what is up with our people and exotic animals? And it's, I don't know. Yeah. It's a very weird subculture.
Yeah, I mean, you never think about like what's weird about your hometown until you have some distance from it. But I guess it's not, if every town has some sort of tiger sanctuary or yoga or a tiger sex cult, is it really weird, or is it just like a franchise thing where everybody gets it's like an Arby's?
Yeah. But so keep Knoxville in your thoughts and prayers, y'all, with this tiger crisis we've got ongoing there. But moving on. Yeah, good luck, Mayor Kane. Moving on to the actual news, such that it is. So I said a couple weeks ago, we had a clip of Trump as a daily dumbass talking to somebody, and he said some dumb shit. And I said something about how, like, why do they keep letting him do interviews? Like, it seems like he should stop doing these interviews. And little did I know, that shit was just the tip of the iceberg, because apparently over the past year or so, going back to late 2019, Trump has sat for 18 hours worth of interviews with legendary journalist Bob Woodward for Woodward's new book. And a lot of the revelations from said book and conversations have just come out, like yesterday. And there's a lot of shit in here, Mark.
Trey, there's so much shit that the most horrifying part to me was that the Secretary of Defense was sleeping in his clothes a lot of nights because we were on the nuclear war. And that's an anecdote everybody fucking forgot about.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I guess we'll come back to that, because again, it is apparently the third or fourth most important thing in this book.
Well, I said, like, I mentioned that, the idea, why does he even keep doing these interviews? Like, what, it seems ill-advised. There's a clip where he directly answers the question of why he did these particular interviews with Bob Woodward. And I actually want to show it, because it's par for the course for Trump, but it still is something else. So Let's get her up there. And as always, Mark, if you can't hear it, tell me. But this is why Donald Trump says he agreed to sit for these interviews with Woodward.
And I did it out of curiosity because I do have respect and I want to see. I wonder whether or not somebody like that can write good. I don't think he can, but let's see what happens.
Look, he does have his finger in I hate the media analysis part of this, where it's like everything's covered from a 30,000-foot view. Like we're all so wizened that we don't care about the actual information. We're more covering the theater of it. It's like, hey, what? The reporter should not be asking the president, why did you let this information get out? It should be like, hey, what the fuck about this information? And
that's true.
I don't even know why anybody would even ask that question. The president should be honest with more people, not less of them. And
you're right. Honestly, dude. Honestly, as fucked up as everything is with him and his administration, and all that. Like, I'm not gonna lie, that didn't even occur to me what you just said until right now. But you're right. The very question even needing to be asked in the first place of the president, why were you okay with sitting down with this legendary American journalist, is fucking insane. But I just took it for granted, because the first thing I thought when I found out about all this was, why did he even do that? But I just thought it was funny that in speaking about Bob Woodward specifically, that Trump's rationale was, I was curious. I wanted to see, can somebody like this write good? And I didn't think he could, but we'll see what happens.
But it is.
But you're right.
It sort of encapsulates where we're at this point, where an actual reporter and the White House press corps is asking, "Sir, do you think being honest with Bob Woodward was a bad strategy?" And it's like,
right.
Like that, I don't care about the strategy part of this, man. Let's not be pundits for a second. Let's ask about like the actual 190,000 dead people.
Right. So on that note, that was, I think, like probably the headline of this Woodward avalanche of bombshells that come out during these conversations, is in them Trump straight up admits to purposefully downplaying COVID and knowing that it was much worse than it was, going out in public and saying, oh, it's one person coming from China. Oh, it's going to be fine. We'll have it knocked out in, X number of weeks or whatever. As he was saying all that outwardly, he was telling Bob Woodward publicly, yeah, this is really bad. You're not even going to believe it. It's not just old people either. It's young people, it turns out. It's like, this is really serious. And so that seems pretty damning.
Yeah, it seems like it would be, but we're
right.
It also shows to me. It also shows that Trump is smarter than we think, because like the whole thing has been like
dude. That was the number one like overarching takeaway that I had from this whole thing. And I don't know how to feel about that, because I agree with you completely. A lot of these clips and excerpts and stuff, they may seem like he's actually smarter than he seems to be. And like
Trey, he's presided over a plague failure with 200,000 dead people and an economic depression, almost a bunch of near wars, and he's polling within the margin of an electoral college victory. So, he maybe his politically, like what we expect of a public servant to actually try to save their constituents. Obviously, he's a huge asshole and should die in prison if we live in a just society. But from the idea of I'm going to do what I need to do to win an election, apparently lying all the way through to keep your cult bubble intact is fairly effective.
Okay, but that. I mean, I know you said, look, I'm not calling anything a done deal, even remotely, at all. But, like, it would have to be some kind of political, like, this is just, like, his persona or something, and that's what, like, no, this is what my people want to hear. But, like, he's in trouble right now.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel like sound strategy to me either, even knowing what we know about Trump's hardcore base and whatnot. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. It's weird.
I mean, Mondale lost 49 states and he didn't kill anybody. So I just feel like it should be further apart. But part of what I'm saying was like it's smarter than you think is like the whole thing has been like, is he so stupid he doesn't understand coronavirus and that's why the response has been so inept? And that's not the case. He absolutely understood the nature of it from the beginning. His public. That's what I thought. What's weird about this scandal? It's not that Trump got caught lying. He's always caught lying.
Right.
usually his supporters like it when he lies because he's honest with them, but lies to reporters to sugar the lips, right? This is him being honest with the Washington establishment and then going out and lying to them. And so this should be ball game, but I don't know.
I know. Yeah, no, you're right. Because like he also at various points in these interviews just admits that systemic racism is a thing, is a problem in America. I mean, he balks at some of it, but at one point he straight up says like, yeah, it's a problem and it's unfortunate. And like, you know, he would never do that publicly. The whole thing is just weird because, again, he knows he knew who he was talking to. He knows it's for a purpose. I don't know. I just can't make sense of the whole goddamn thing. It's like I said, because I still I can't make any of it make sense from his perspective. And so it makes me still want to point to, oh yeah, he's dumb, but it's so weird that a lot of the like big bombshell revelations that have come out from it paint him as being more aware and knowledgeable about various subjects than he's ever seemed to be. Like, I would never have called that. I'm not going to lie. Like, if you told me something like this was coming out and how do you think he's going to come across in it, that is not what I would have said. But it also, it still is very bad. It's like you said, it should be game over. Mm-hmm. So it's not like a sound play politically or anything.
Well,
I don't know. It's weird.
They're running the same playbook they did last week about like Jeffrey Goldberg's Atlantic article, where they're basically treating the president on the record to Bob Woodward as if he's an anonymous source that Bob Woodward can't back up, as if there's not audio tapes of him saying it. They're just out there being like, oh, he's out to get the president. Yeah, I mean, Bob Woodward, he says, I think he's the wrong man for the job. You know, that Washington centrist voice, like commander in chief or whatever. He's like, he doesn't think Trump's a good president. He probably would told Trump that to his face if Trump had asked. So I just somebody being out to get you doesn't mean they're not right. You know.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So let's go over some of the other things that came out from it. He also admitted to saving Mohammed bin Salman. Mohammed bin Salman,
MBS,
Crown Prince of Saudi.
MBS.
The Saudi Crown Prince over the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Is that right, or is it Khashoggi?
Khashoggi, right? I think it's Khashoggi,
Khashoggi, right? Yeah,
for Americans, it's close enough,
right? Who was the journalist who was writing for the Washington Post and went back to Saudi Arabia to get a marriage license, and
he went to Turkey, I think. He went to Turkey. He was Saudi embassy in Turkey to get
the Saudi
documents
embassy,
so he could get. He was trying to get married. He knew he could get married to Saudi Arabia. Yeah,
and never returned because he was brutally murdered, and it was a huge story at the time, rightfully so. And there were countless denials from the Saudi crown and everything of any responsibility for it, but it's since been basically confirmed by various intelligence agencies and whatnot that they were responsible for it. And in these interviews with Woodward, Trump said, here's the quote, he said about the Crown Prince, "I saved his ass. I was able to get Congress to leave him alone. I was able to get them to stop." So he basically just confirms what actually happened, and then also brags about getting that guy off the hook for it. Just what makes that a good idea?
to time travel back a couple of years, so everybody remembers exactly what happened here. How dirty this is going to get after Full Truth came out. MBS bragged that Jared was sharing top secret American intelligence with him, right? And so we don't know how much they knew beforehand. This was a pretty big to kill an American resident, have him dismembered in a way that and then Turkish intelligence leaked it to the public for a reason. They knew it happened, and they're trying to flex in Saudi Arabia to ingratiate themselves with us. So we probably abandoned the Kurds. What we did, this is all such real politic by a bunch of bubbling morons. MBS is the Saudi equivalent of Jared, pampered fail son who doesn't know how to do anything, who's just lashing out and killing anyone who remotely opposes him. And Khashoggi's family, they go way back. They're Saudi elites to, and he was writing scathing anti-MBS stuff, and so MBS had him killed, and was apparently surprised that people were mad about it. I think his quote to Jared was like, what's with all the hypocrisy?" Which is right. I mean,
the Iranian general earlier this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's at least a military actor on a battlefield. I'm
not drawing but I'm saying we have a long and storied history of just like killing who we want to in other countries.
I mean, American police are shooting reporters in the face with rubber bullets right now on our own streets. Right. I'm just saying, like, we've lost a lot of moral authority in the last couple of years. I'm saying we had perfectly clean hands before. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, it's so out in the open now that we're not good.
Yeah, and right after Khashoggi's death, Trump bypassed Congress to sell $8 billion worth of missiles and high-tech weapons to Saudi Arabia and the UAE. He vetoed multiple resolutions from Congress rebuking him for that. He blocked a War Powers Act resolution to end military support for the UAE and the Saudi-led war in Yemen. So he just really laying all the cards out there. And then, of course, out after the Atlantic accused him of disrespecting the military. His whole response to that was, well, it's not soldiers, it's the top brass who all they care about is making money for these big military contractors and all that shit. Like, that was 2 days ago. his first major trip abroad as president was to Saudi. It was when he touched that orb, that glowing orb, remember? That was to celebrate selling them weapons. And like usually the president's first big trip abroad is like it shows your foreign policy priorities, right? That's what your agenda is going to be. And his was selling weapons. See, they also, some of the conversations center around his relationship with Kim Jong-un. And I just think this one's funny. In describing his chemistry with Mr. Kim, Donald Trump said, quote, "You meet a woman, in 1 second you know whether or not it's going to happen." And that's how he describes just how much him and Kim Jong-un apparently hit it off. They're just two peas in a pod, those guys. Sparks flying, Mark.
He talks about romance and sex with Kim Jong-un a lot. This isn't like the only time. It's pretty, I don't go for it, man. If it brings world peace and makes you happy, I don't know. We avoid the nuclear war.
So, by the way, side note, and this has been brought up before on previous episodes, but what is the latest as far as any of us know in this country about Kim Jong-un? Because that was an insane story too. That again, there's just been so much insanity this year; it's hard to even keep up with. I feel like people forget, but he was missing, maybe dead at one point, and still hasn't been seen in public.
2 points. In two separate occasions, he was presumed dead. And Trump this morning tweeted he just talked to Kim Jong-un, and he's in good health. Can't keep a good man down or something like that. Checking in his buddy.
So he is alive. Has he been seen in public since? Is he other than what Trump said? Is it still up in the air? Kind of what is up with him, or do we know that he's alive?
There were rumors a couple weeks ago that he was on his deathbed in a coma, and his sister was taking over. This is a guy who we were joking the other day on text. I found this article about how much he eats and drinks. The man can party. He apparently, if he's apparently drunk when he had his uncle blown up by artillery guns, and forgot that he was blacked out and forgot that he ordered it. He woke up the next day.
Kim Jong-un contracted gout at the age of 30. People aren't that familiar with it. Gout is generally a much older person's disease that is brought upon and exacerbated by basically hard living, a lot of wine drinking, a lot of red meat eating, stuff like that. That's how you get gout. So to get it at 30 is pretty noteworthy. But here's the thing. Friend of the show and everybody's favorite, the buttercream dream, Corey Forrester, he contracted gout at 28, so he's got Kim Jong-un beat on that one. And I'm putting him on blast, but he knows I'll do it. I do it all the time. But yeah, he had to cut. It's so funny because to get his gout in line, he had to just stop eating steak multiple times a day. Basically, Corey did, and that managed to get it. And no more IPAs. cut out IPAs, cut out steak for breakfast, and now his gout's under control. That's how he lives. Anyway, so
preemptive rest in peace to the buttercream drink.
Yeah. So obviously there's been like all kinds of, there's been a firestorm of coverage over this Woodward stuff. And
for a sec, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I wanted to talk about Jim Mattis again for a second, because like we talked about a little bit of how the media is failing, or a little bit earlier, the White House press corps asking about punditry as opposed to actual information in people's lives. Jim Mattis was apparently, while he was sleeping in clothes because they were on the verge of a nuclear war, was telling everyone how irresponsible Trump was and how unhinged he was, and was going to the Washington Cathedral to pray for the survival of our country once a day, and took no steps to solve any sort of problem. And I just like the degree to which everyone is like completely collapsing under the pressure of this moment. If you really believe that as a cabinet secretary, you have avenues available to you. One, during the impeachment inquiry, you could have come public and told Senate Republicans. They probably wouldn't have done anything, but give it a shot, man. I'm talking about like the survival of 300 million people in nuclear hellfire. You have the 25th Amendment. If you can rally enough cabinet secretaries, you probably couldn't again, but like no one's asking you to win. We're asking you to try. And
so all right, that's actually related to what I was about to get into, which is what Trump has said about how basically all this is Woodward's fault, really, because Trump's whole thing is like, look, if it's so bad, if it's as bad as everything you guys are saying, why didn't he report it to somebody? The president said about an interview. Why didn't he go to the authorities with this information? And obviously, it sounds stupid. It seems like an ill-advised thing to say. But, like, I mean, legitimately, though, because we're talking about the beginning of this global crisis, the COVID pandemic in America. And, I mean, Woodward seemed to know that the president had a greater understanding of the severity of it than he was letting on. So, I mean, you know, how valid of a thing is that to bring up of like, why didn't he say or do something about it? Should he have? Like, I mean,
I think the counter argument, I'll say it up front before saying I disagree with it, is that like he says two things. One, he made like people understood that he gets this kind of access because he's writing big picture takeaways that come in book form and not doing, gotcha quote mongering kind of stuff. So he's going to fit it into a larger narrative that's going to try to be fair to all the people who are doing history in real time, right? And he also said that he didn't come out with it because he didn't know if he wanted to try to confirm whether Trump was lying to him about COVID being airborne, which the reality of that seems not like, it's not your responsibility to do the president favors by, I guess he thought maybe Trump was lying to him, but was being honest in public. So he wanted to have 6 months more of science to know what was happening. I don't really understand his thought process. I think it's all pretty dumb. I mean, everyone's acting like Bob Woodward's acting like he's going to have the opportunity to read another book about Joe Biden's presidency in 2 years, right? No one, everyone's acting like a football coach down by 4 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, start running the ball. And I don't know why we're going through the motions of doing things the way we always have done them. We're in like several dire emergencies. I mean, like the sun never came out here today because all of California's on fire.
Right.
And it seems like we should be acting with more urgency about a lot of stuff, especially when we're on the verge of nuclear war like 3 years ago.
Right. So on that note, I was going to say, just like benefit of the doubt, just because I know from talking to one of my best friends, was a Marine for years, and I've talked to him about Mattis and how revered he is by the Marine Corps and everything, and how respected and all that. And so just at first we were talking about that, I was thinking like, well, maybe there's an argument to be made that while he's in the midst of it, his thought process could be like, if I try to go public with any of this or do anything about it, I'm 100% going to be fired and be gone. And I feel better being in the room and having some kind of say and trying to keep what I'm worried about happening from happening than to be cast out on the street. But he's been gone for a long time now, and like still hasn't, that I'm aware of. I mean, he has chastised Trump publicly over, the way he's handled protests and stuff like that, and his deploying the military in them, but he hasn't he hasn't come out and said the shit that is in these interviews, apparently, about, I thought we were all gonna die. And yeah, that's kind of a bad look, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we're still doing politics by Marquis of Queensberry rules while the world burns around us. I don't understand it. It's very, very weird. It's like there aren't it's like John Kelly was like, well, it's not, as a 4-star general, it's not my role to get involved in politics. Like, motherfucker, you were a cabinet secretary and then White House chief of staff. Like, you're in politics now. You can't retreat back behind that veil. And by the way, if the survival of the republic depends on this stuff, like the norms don't really matter anymore. And also, like, this stuff is based on less than 200 years of like 50 some elections or whatever. Like there's no this isn't large sample size stuff. We're making this stuff up as we go along. So just do what you think is right and don't stop worried about like what a guy even years ago so much.
Yeah. Well, so, all right, moving on, because you brought it up a minute ago. The wildfires out here in California continue to rage on. It's crazy. It's been like half-ass dark all day today. Like, it's like super cloudy, like there's about to be a thunderstorm or something, but there's not. It's just smoke because the state is on fire again, as it is every year at this time. And
well, no, wildfire season hasn't actually started yet, Trey. That's the thing. Wildfire season's still coming. This is like California. We got the biggest wildfire in California history, as far as we know, and it's not even on time yet.
And doesn't seem to give much of a fuck about it at all, as has been the case in previous years too. Is the president seems to not be too overly enthused about the federal government helping out a state like California specifically when it's going through something like this, because basically California don't like him. And I mean, I feel like he's pretty much said that before. Like, if they, they don't support me, so fuck them, basically. Which again is just, that's such an insane thing to say that people kind of just take for granted now because of how he has been. But that's crazy for the American president to say that about one of the biggest, most populated states in the union. Essentially, fuck them. They can figure it out themselves. They're not going to vote for me anyway, or they don't support me anyway. Like, yeah, that's what he does.
And somebody made this point. I thought it was a good one, actually, because I think the Electoral College sucks. I think you're not on the same page about that. But in another way in which it sucks is, like, California has 55 million people. 40% of them still vote for him. It's just not enough to give him any electoral votes. So if he had to actually compete for popular votes here, he might be worried about that 40%, because that's his. I mean, honestly, like, the countryside's burning. It's in Northern California. It's like where his voters are in the state, central and Northern California, the rural areas. So I just don't. It's a completely. The incentives are not aligned. If you we didn't realize how much we were relying on our presidents being decent people until now. I mean, even George W. would have set the National Guard or something. Because here's the beauty of it. We usually rely on prison population to fight wildfires. We can't send the prisoners out to fight the wildfires right now because they all have COVID. So just a series of calamitous clusterfucks.
But the thing about it is, like I said, he pretty much does just come out and say, like, I'm not inclined to help out states that don't support me, right? Which is, again, super fucked up. But that kind of implies that he's, focusing all his efforts on helping out the states that do support him. You know what I mean? And, like, I'm not seeing the results of that shit either. I mean, I know that, like, when there's tragedies and whatnot, aid's provided and that type of thing. But all I'm saying is, like, I don't feel like my home state of Tennessee is just absolutely thriving overall as a result of Trump's presidency. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like he's just propping them all up to the detriment of all the blue states, which would, of course, be inexcusable and very fucked up. But, like, it's just shitty for everybody, it seems to me like.
Yeah, for sure. But also micro-targeting, not state by state, but like district by district. Like, poor people live in floodplains, So if nobody in Lake Charles can vote because they're all underwater and there's no electricity, that's probably good for him, even though he's already going to win Louisiana. Same thing with like flooding on the Mississippi River or like in Iowa or whatever. I mean, it might, he's going to win Iowa by so much, it probably doesn't matter. But I think they actually did send some resources to Iowa, but it's a ton of damage. Yeah, but it's like relative to I know 2/3 of the American population lives east of the Mississippi, but like I wonder what it would look like with media coverage of, because the entire West Coast is on fire. It's not just California, it's Oregon, it's Washington.
Right.
A city of 85,000 people was evacuated yesterday in Washington. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of property burning, a lot of houses, a lot of homes, a lot of livelihoods, and doesn't seem to rate much in the national conversation.
Yeah. I'm trying to find right now, because you just made me think of it when you brought that up. This is let's see if I can get the actual picture pulled up. But like, you're talking about the fires in Oregon. You've seen like pictures and whatnot from Oregon. It's fucking insane. Like, you talk about a hellscape. Like, the sky is literally red, and it's fucking wild.
The air in the Bay Area is unbreathable right now. Like a huge metropolitan area, nobody's got air. Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, the air's weird here right now. You know, I mean, it's like I said, it's been like smoky all day.
Smells like we're in a bonfire. The entire outdoors. Very weird. I got my patio is covered in ash. There's not even a wildfire near here. It's just this closest one's probably 200 miles.
Right. Yeah, that's what it looks like in Oregon. I don't know about right now, but I saw that picture yesterday. A UPS truck sitting out in somebody's driveway, and it's like from a fucking Doom game or something. It's insane out here.
And like, I know you're probably like, well, that's probably dusk. That's probably like 2 p.m.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I've had a lot of people, my people back in Tennessee call me a lot and wondering if we're okay, if we're going to have to run from these fires, which I understand, because I remember the first year we lived out here and I came home to Burbank and I saw the fucking mountains in the distance just on fire. They were just literally on fire. We could stand on our front porch and watch the mountains burn, and there was ash falling in our front yard and whatnot. And I was texting the people that I did know out here that lived out here for a while, and I was like, should we run? Like what? Like should we get the fuck out of here? Because I don't know how to deal with fucking wildfires at all. It's not. We had horrible wildfires in East Tennessee a few years ago, but that was an anomaly. Normally, it doesn't happen. But yeah, it's a freaky fucking thing, man. It's weird if you're not, even if you are used to it. And I don't mean to sound like I'm making fun of the idea of should we run, because sometimes you gotta fucking run. Like, some of these people have barely any real warning, and they gotta get the fuck out of there because it happens fast, and the shit is scary.
The fires move real fast. We're talking like 10, 15, 20 miles an hour, depending on the winds, and it'll jump a whole interstate. So jump like 300 yards. A fire will carry it. It's fairly routine here to be driving down the interstate, and both sides of will be on fire. The sides of the hills. I didn't know this before I moved here. It's hard to describe, but LA is more. It's built over top of canyons and stuff, so there's a lot of hills that are covered in brush. So it's not full on metropolis kind of. It's more like a giant stretching winding suburb covered in trees and bushes. Beauty of it is, if you're working class or broke or live in the city like we do, it has to burn through all the rich people's properties in the outlying areas where they have the ranches and stuff to get here first. So it's like we're talking like it's like when you see on the news, like they're evacuating horses. It's like, because like the ranches where they keep the horses they use in westerns. Those are outline areas and stuff before it gets a long time before it gets here.
Yeah, I always tell Mima whenever she invariably asks, like if we get to a point where we have to leave, like, it will have already been a massive story, because it would have burned through like Walt Disney Studios, or Warner Brothers or whatever. Like, it will be a massive catastrophe if it gets to where we are in neighborhood of Burbank here.
Where I live is mostly concrete, so it's nothing to burn here.
So, now I wanted to lighten the mood a little bit with some more, and I mean, it's still like, I think this stuff is funny.
Stop talking about end times for a minute.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the thing is like this. I find some of this like kind of funny, but it also is still maddening because it has to do with fucking Trump, of course. So he engaged. He's known to engage in one of my favorite pastimes of Republican politicians, which is not giving a single fuck about the lyrics of the songs they use on the campaign trail. Bruce Springsteen has talked a lot about it. About Born USA being used for these like super patriotic rallies and shit, which is not at all the point of the show. And this is or the song, not at all the point of the song.
John Mellencamp, Pink Houses, same thing. Like Reagan thought that was like it's definitely an Americana song. It's not a pro-America song.
So this is Donald Trump arriving in Wisconsin, right? Is that where we're at here?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fortunate Son, baby. But Fortunate Son is basically about Donald Trump and not in a good way.
Right.
But they think it's patriotic because he says some people are born made to wave the flag. And it's like, oh, the flag.
Well,
good. Okay.
And also because like they've seen some badass scenes in movies about the 70s or like, Vietnam movies and shit set to that song. And so they're just like, yeah, this badass American song here. But you're right. Like he's literally what that song is about, and he's the antagonist of it. He's the villain of it. So just the lack of self-awareness, stepping off the plane to Fortunate Son, like, it ain't me. It's like, no, it is 100% absolutely you, buddy.
It's about the song's about the poor kids not being able to get out of going to Vietnam. And
right.
Exactly. It's like, good.
And now look, I don't think I'm certain he probably doesn't pick the songs he walks off the plane to, but still, it applies to the administration at large. It's still a lack of self-awareness for the entity as a whole, regardless of who's personally involved with it. It's just so silly. Here's another example of what I was talking about. Like I said, I find it funny, but I know it's also maddening because this is the goddamn president of the United States we're talking about here. This is Donald Trump. This is how Donald Trump keeps informed. But
if they say half as much as I already know just from seeing it, you have people. I watch some of the shows. I watched Liz McDonald. She's fantastic. I watched Fox Business. I watched Lou Dobbs last night, Sean Hannity last night, Tucker last night, Laura. I watched Fox and Friends in the morning. You watch these shows, you don't have to go too far into the details. They cover things it's really an amazing thing.
All right. So what is that, Mark? 7 hours of Fox News the president's apparently watching instead of reading his intelligence briefs or whatnot?
Fox and Friends runs 3 hours. So somebody did the math. It's 9 hours television. He just talked about watching
9 hours. It's like if people that have like an older parent or something who has gotten into a place in their life where they just like sit on the couch and watch Fox News all day and you're really worried about them because it seems to be like poisoning their mind and whatnot. That's literally Donald Trump. Like he is that person. Like he has some of the best, intelligence and information and data and statistics and subject matter experts and all of that available to any person on planet Earth. And he watches Fox News for 9 hours a day, apparently. Like, and is tweeting all day too. Like he literally can't be doing genuinely presidential stuff for much of the day, even with just those two pieces of information or three. He has to sleep at least a little bit. How much he's on Twitter, and this is how much he says he watches Fox News every single day. So, like, what is left, man?
There was a point earlier today where he tweeted 30 times in 30 minutes. But the idea, how do I put this? Like first of all, he's watching. He was on Hannity last night, so he went on it, then watched it back, and he's the protagonist of these shows. So it's like the equivalent of spending 9 hours a day listening to the podcast you were a guest on. Like he likes it just because he's the center of the universe, which is like, think about like how boring this is relative to, like, you talked about the information he has access to. He can literally read like President Xi of China's like text messages to his side chick. And like he can have access to all that stuff. He can read about whether they're aliens.
He's got the Area 51 notes and shit. He's got all that stuff.
Somebody come brief him over what happened if and when we went to the moon. He could know all that stuff. Right. He could know all of it. And instead, he'd rather watch Laura Ingraham talk about himself. It's crazy.
Yeah, goddamn. Fucking, that's a narcissist for you, but that's you're right. It's just, I don't know. I don't know how you even handle that. Like, how much of what goes on inside that White House you think is the people around him? You know what I mean? As far as like puppet masters and shit, like Dick Cheney and that sort of shit. Like, how much agency do you think he like really has with all this? And I'm not trying to let him off the hook with that. I'm just saying, like, do you think other people are mostly driving the bus?
Yeah, I mean, all the cabinet secretaries seem to be running their own. Like you either have like guys like Wilbur Ross and Steve Mnuchin who are just running scams, or you have like Betsy DeVos, who's like an ideologue who actually is trying to tear down public education, is doing it. But there's no like unified theory of government. He just gave positions to people, and he only gets pissed when he sees what they're doing on the news. Like his educational concern is like the 1619 project, so he might call Betsy DeVos and be like, "We got to do something on 1619," and then he hangs up the phone and just watches what happens on television. I don't think like the government's been on autopilot for 4 years outside of his pet scams, which is like installing loyalist people in places, and then they get to run their own little petty scams, like giving themselves contracts to make ventilators or whatever. So it's like it's a government of nothing, for nothing, run by nothing. All
right, so let's go to the comments here, see what's going on. Here's one. I'm gonna be honest right up top. I'm not sure exactly about but Michelle Minich Spencer says, "Can y'all please give your thoughts on the possibility of Senators Ted Cruz, Tom Cotton, and Josh Hawley being nominated to the Supreme Court?" What do you know about that, Mark?
I mean, obviously it'd be a disaster.
You're right. Yeah.
Those are all three really bad guys. I don't think Tom Cotton would accept because he wants to be president. I think Hawley does too. Ted Cruz might have learned his lesson, but he's an idiot. Like I think he probably learned that Americans don't think he has charisma or likability. But you never know. He does worship that like the Federalist Society debate club kind of bullshit. So he might enjoy being on the Supreme Court. But it was fairly transparent. They dropped that the same day that Woodward stuff came out, which is just sort of like, guys in this are thinking about abandoning me. Not only would you be given a Supreme Court in general, but here for three of you, you might have a shot at being on it. You know, lifetime appointment. You get to make it illegal for women to read or whatever. It's just such a silly little. It seemed like a really weird scam to be running. I mean, obviously Republicans always run on judges, which I wish the left would do that. By the way, would actually pay attention to the courts.
So you mentioned Betsy DeVos a minute ago. Ellen Clark says Betsy DeVos wants everyone in religious schools. She wants to basically privatize all education, as far as I'm aware of what she would like to see happen. And I don't talked a lot about how one of the biggest chunks of Trump's base is supposed to be like rural Americans. And as somebody who grew up in an extremely rural area, like, I don't understand how that's even supposed to work, like even in their minds. The idea of like privatizing all education, like if you get rid of public schools, I don't know where rural kids are going to go to school anymore. I'm sure there's plenty of places where they can figure something out, but like where I grew up, we would have had to you'd have to go an hour each way at least to have any kind of option if it wasn't for a public school.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really bad idea, but also a good example of a thing I like to think about a lot. Like one reason we shouldn't let go of this is because we're not going to be able to reestablish them. Is watching that with the post office right now, and public schools and stuff, libraries. If you try to establish things that people thought were in the public good 200 years ago, you get called a communist. Like right. Imagine if police didn't exist, right? And Obama had proposed them in 2014. The freak out, Barack Hussein Obama wants to put an armed agent of the state on every corner, right? The people would have lost their goddamn minds. The same thing with public schools. They would take your tax dollars to program them about socialist thinking or whatever. We're not going to get this back. We're really far down the bend with any sort of idea of common good. And I don't get it. Yeah, we're in rural areas, inner city areas, places without large tax where people don't have money. Where literally the only way you can have a school is by everyone chipping in, even if you don't have kids or only have grandkids or whatever. It's the only way you can educate people. And even then, we had like 5th generation textbooks that still said dinosaurs were around 300 years ago or whatever. So.
T.S. Ferguson says, isn't Tom Cotton some weird racist Disney character we're supposed to pretend doesn't exist? Yeah, Tom Cotton's from Song of the South. Disney tried to bury him, but he's back.
His name is a little bit on the nose.
Yeah. Yes. Navarius08 says, hell, let's throw in the pillow guy for the Supreme Court. And yeah, I'm with you.
He would be, honestly, he'd be less destructive than Ted Cruz because he'd be eclectic. You never know where he's going to come on stuff. You know? The guy likes crack too, so he might relapse, and he knows a recovering crack addict. So if he relapses, they can spot clear up really quick.
Linda St. John Heileman says, what about Trump leaking national secrets about a super secret weapon? What do you think, Mark?
Well, no one. So in Woodward's book, he bragged to Woodward about like a new secret nuclear weapon, nuclear systems that no one knew about. And now I'll say 2 things about this. One, he probably shouldn't be talking about that. There's no real. Everything's declassified. The president wants it to be, so it's like he can say whatever he wants. There's no law against. He can't be prosecuted for dropping top secrets. So it's just funny. But if he's talking like our nuclear weapon systems, if you read anything about it, it's pretty scary how old they are. They still run on MS DOS and like hard lines and shit. So they could like a rat could bite a cable and launch a missile. So somebody should be upgrading those. So if he's doing that, that's awesome. Someone theorized that we're talking about supersonic nuclear missiles, which I'm assuming any competent state intelligence agency knows we already have those, if we have them, but probably still shouldn't be talking about them in the newspaper. Anyway, it was just another one of his long line of fuck ups in this book.
Yeah, and there's been a few different commenters saying some version of like, this is all making headlines right now with Woodward's book and everything, but like none of this shit is really that surprising and probably also won't matter. And I saw an opinion piece on Fox News about it, basically arguing the exact same thing. It was so fun, like coming from the conservative perspective and still being like, look, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do about it? Who gives a shit? His whole thing was like a different tell-all book comes out every week, villainizing and demonizing the president. How is this one really gonna be any different? No, wait and see. And I just like that argument is so hilarious to me because the idea of like just justifying the latest horrific look for the president by saying, do you realize how many horrific looks this guy's had in the public sphere over the past little bit? But they do it with no trace of irony or self-awareness at all. And also, like, I mean, as far as that goes, I think they're right. I don't think anyone who we need to really care about it will really care about it. It's like you said earlier, Mark, like it should be, curtain call, but it won't. And I agree with you, it won't. I mean, obviously, I'm still hoping that he loses, but yeah, it won't. It's not gonna. You can't change their minds, as far as I can tell.
I mean, like elections are decided on the margins, right? So if half a percent of people flip for any reason because of this, it'll make a big difference in the final vote tally. But this obviously hasn't been cut up into campaign ads and started running during football games yet. So where people can't avoid it if they can online or whatever. So I don't know what it's going to do. But also, I wish we would all get away from that kind of analysis, like we were talking about earlier, where the reporter's asking a question about political strategy as opposed to the actual revelations. It's like we're all pundits now, right? We're all trying to anticipate a hypothetical vote on the electorate instead of just being like, this is fucked up that he did this. And I hate when people are like, well, random voters on CNN will get asked, how will this scandal play? So no, ask, what do you think about it, right? What do you?
Right.
How is it going to affect your life? Have you lost someone because of COVID? How do you feel about losing the last 6 months of your life in your house and not being able to hug your grandkids? How do you feel about that? Those are the real questions. I mean, I know we're here to talk about politics with a little bit of a remove, but I just wish in general the coverage would be more like about how are you affected by this? You know, like as opposed to how is this going to affect your neighborhood, your neighbor's vote?
So Maggie Whitcomb says, did y'all see Ted Cruz has a bacon cooking show with machine guns? A, I have not seen, but B, I'm already upset by that because that log line description of it makes Ted Cruz sound like way more badass than anyone would believe Ted Cruz actually is. Like, that can't be. I don't like that. I don't like Ted. You put Ted Cruz with a bacon show with machine guns on it. No, that's.
I've seen a viral clip of him wrapping barrel around like I think it was an AR, and then shooting it on full auto, which cooks the bacon, and then he eats it and goes, freedom, which is like, yeah, freedom in its entirety is to shoot a gun and eat bacon.
I'm sorry, I didn't know what we were talking about. We're saying he cooks the bacon with machine guns, is what we're saying here?
Yeah, you wrap it around the barrel. I thought it was just like,
it's a cooking show where they eat bacon and also shoot machine guns. But we're talking about again. See, there again, somebody came up with that for him. That's too stupid and funny in a good way to be a Ted Cruz idea. Like, I
cannot believe like this performative redneck shit. People fell for it with George W. Bush, who's from New England and went to school in Andover. He got a fake West Texas accent and started wearing cowboy boots and bought a ranch where he pretended to clear brush on his off days. And people were like, oh, he's a working man of the people. Ted Cruz went to private high school, Princeton, Harvard. He went by Raphael until he decided he didn't want to sound Hispanic anymore. So he was sort of going by Ted because his real name's Eduardo or whatever. And it's like this is all incredibly performative. And I can't believe anyone buys that Ted Cruz it goes out and shoots guns in his flat front chinos with his polo shirt tucked into his woven belt or whatever.
It's like when fucking Roy Moore almost fell off that horse that time.
And he didn't know how to ride.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like that type of shit. I know, but I don't know. They just want to. I mean, Trump's the biggest example of that that's ever been. Except like he doesn't even mostly do that type of shit. But what I mean is like they'll find a way to make their guy fit into that framework. You know what I'm saying? So if you go out of your way to do it yourself, to cook bacon with an assault rifle or be stupid on a horse or whatever, they're going to fall right in line with that because they're already trying to do that, those mental gymnastics anyway, to convince themselves that the guy who's telling them the shit they want to hear is one of them. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I can't get my mind there. Yeah.
No, I know. Yeah. Let's see what we got over here. First of all, I want to say, looking through some of these last comments here, there's been a lot of people asking about the quality, meaning like the quality of the stream and whatnot, and I'm thinking and very, very much hoping that it's a byproduct of the shit we were talking about with the fires and everything that's going on out here. I don't know. I'm computer dumb as hell. I don't know how it all works, but I'm assuming that's got something to do with it as far as the stream being kind of shitty and whatnot. And obviously we apologize for it, but also like, we want to do it live and it's just doing what we can. So hopefully it won't be as bad next Tuesday, but I don't know what else to say about it. It annoys me too, for sure. But it's also like, I don't know. I can't really tell what it looks like to you guys, like what I see is not what a lot of y'all see, I think. And it's hard for me to tell when things are going fucky or not.
I see people say it's not ish. I don't know, because sometimes like you'll be herky jerky, you'll be bad on my you coming through my stream, but when I go click on playback to see how it looks fine on the stream. So I don't know, it's very weird. But
Mark, what's this? I know this is a Woodward related quote. I can't remember the context right now. I read so many of the different things today. Frank Rapepi said, it's a quote. It says, "You really drank the Kool-Aid, didn't you?" Isn't that Woodward said that, or I'm sorry, Trump said that to Woodward, didn't he? About was it about racism? Do you know what that's from? I was just totally banking on you knowing it.
No, I don't know what it's about.
I'm gonna try to find it real quick. Trump did. White privilege. That's what it is.
Okay.
Woodward,
that's right, yeah.
Woodward in framing a question says, like, look, let's be honest. You and I, we're both white, privileged. And he asked about racism. In Trump's response, he says, "Wow, you really drank the Kool-Aid, huh?" Meaning he doesn't believe he's white or privileged. I'm sure he knows he's white, but you know what I mean. That's all bullshit to him. He earned all of this. He wasn't born on second base or third base at all. He hit a grand slam, and all that's just excuses other people make for not being as successful as he is.
Yeah, I do think they got it. White privilege is a bad. I fully believe in the concept. It's a bad term. It needs to rebrand. For a guy like Trump to be like it doesn't exist when literally he should have been like. I mean, the banks could have sent him to jail for fraud in the '90s. They chose not to, because they thought the better play was to try to recoup some of their money back by letting them declare bankruptcy and extracting some of it. But so. He bought his way, like he bought Don Jr. and Ivanka out of jail 3 years ago when they had the New York DA, Cy Vance, who sucks, by the way. They gave a campaign contribution to get the charges dropped on them. We all know about the $400 million inheritance. It's like for him not to think that privilege exists is like fucking insane.
Mark, no, it ain't me. It ain't me. I ain't no fortunate son. Not Donald Trump. It doesn't apply to him. All right, we're out of time. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next Tuesday on Evening Skews. See you. Love you. Bye.
Yep. Bye, guys.